I now declare the J. Edgar Hoover Memorial FBI Post 56 of the Department of the District of Columbia of the American Legion now regularly convened.
July 1950, and North Korea has invaded South Korea, and the 24th Infantry Regiment was rushed in from Japan as the United Nations forces were being pushed all the way back, just a strategic withdrawal, if you will. And I'd like to take you to August 5, 1950, just for a moment. And the 24th Infantry Regiment was in a withdrawal as well as many other American and United Nations units. And the request was made for a small detail of men to remain behind to cover the withdrawal of the 24th Infantry Regiment. Lieutenant Chester Lennon was in command, and 6 volunteers. My good friend, Command Sergeant Major retired Womack, was one of those 6 soldiers who volunteered to remain behind with his BAR to cover the withdrawal of the 24th Infantry Regiment. During the fierce combat, that 6-man detail was pretty much overrun. Command Sergeant Major Womack was wounded, left behind, believed to be dead. 7 days later, when the 24th Infantry retook that ground, they found Command Sergeant Womack dehydrated, blinded, and but very much alive. That's just to set the stage for one of the Purple Hearts that Command Sergeant Womack received. And I'd like to bring to the attention of the Post that Commander Harpold is ahead of the curve, because what we learned is on February the 11th, I've been requested to bring Command Sergeant Womack to the Pentagon at the Black History Month celebration this year at the Pentagon. It is on the subject of African Americans in the Korean War. And I do believe that the Marine Corps American Legion posts nationwide are celebrating the Korean War this year. So it's only fitting that we have my dear friend Command Sergeant Womack here representing not just the Deuce 4, the 24th Infantry Regiment, but all Korean War veterans from that forgotten war.
So it is my pleasure tonight to speak to you about a great American hero. Not one of the heroes you might see on a television show or in movies or on the news for a moment or two. No, the hero I wish to speak of tonight probably never has been on television or in the world news. I'm speaking of a genuine hero who has done many heroic things in his life without taking much time out for accolades. If he had he might have been frustrated at the waste of time that would have felt to him. Because, you see, he had a job to do, a job that spanned 3.5 decades of his life. That job was to serve, protect, and lead in the fight to keep enemies of the United States of America from taking away our freedom and opportunity to live in the greatest country in the world. Curtis Donald Womack was born on May the 27th, 1928 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He enlisted in the United States Army in January 1946. He graduated from basic combat training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and was assigned to the 365th Infantry Regiment. Just as a footnote right here, it would seem that Command Sergeant Major Womack and I have something in common. In 1946, I too was in basic training in Kansas City, Missouri. Every day for several months, I did what must have been hundreds of push-ups just trying to roll over from my belly to my back as an infant. Anyway, Command Sergeant Major Womack is one of the most renowned and decorated soldiers of his time. It should be noted here that Corporal Womack, at the time of the Korean War, was one of the last soldiers to serve and fight in the last Black Infantry Regiment, the 24th, as Drick pointed out, during its last tour of duty in Korea during 1950 and 1951. Corporal Womack earned 4 of his 5 Purple Hearts while he was serving in Korea. His first Purple Heart was earned on July the 21st, 1950, when his regiment retook Yecheon. This action was the first victory of Korean War for the United Nations forces. Corporal Womack's 77th Combat Engineer Company was attacked and Corporal Womack was injured. He was airlifted to Japan for medical care, but 9 days later, Corporal Womack returned to his unit. He was again wounded in battle at Sanju, Korea, earning his second Purple Heart. In August 1950, Corporal Womack was one of 6 volunteers, as Drick pointed out, who remained behind with 2nd Lieutenant Chester Lennon to cover the withdrawal of the 3rd Battalion, 24th Infantry Regiment. In this particular part of the war, this battle, I should say, 2nd Lieutenant Chester Lennon received the Distinguished Service Cross. Corporal Womack was shot in the face and arm and left for dead. And the battle for this hill was taken. This hill lasted 30 days, and it was taken and retaken 19 different times. 7 days after he was wounded in enemy territory, Corporal Womack was found alive by his unit, and this incident earned him his life back and a 3rd Purple Heart. His 4th Purple Heart was earned when he was wounded while taking a small boat across the Han River under enemy machine gun, mortar, and small arms fire. In spite of the overwhelming firepower of the North Koreans, Corporal Womack succeeded in planting the pontoon bridge line that allowed the 24th Regiment to cross. The North Koreans were pushed back across the 38th parallel. Years later, the 24th Infantry Regiment's victory at Yichon, July 1950, and the crossing of the Han River near Seoul, March 1951, was an important part of what General Matthew B. Ridgway was referring to in an article in the New York Times published May 1991. In that article, General Ridgway characterized these 2 battles as the most successful single actions fought by troops under my command during either World War II in Europe or in Korea. It's very important to point out the history behind the U.S. Army's 24th Regiment. In a 1996 article published in the U.S. News and World Report written by Joseph Galloway, it was established by Congress shortly after the Civil War in honor of the sacrifices of nearly 250,000 blacks who fought for the Union Army. It was segregated, but it was an integral part of the U.S. Army. They came to be known as the Buffalo Soldiers. And the 24th Regiment was part of that and fought Indians and outlaws on the Texas frontier in the 1870s and 1880s. They also fought with courage and honor on San Juan Hill in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. They served honorably in the Philippines insurrection and marched with General John J. Pershing into Mexico in search of Pancho Villa and his revolutionaries. In 1948, in Executive Order 9981, President Harry Truman's anti-discrimination order, Truman made it very clear that racial discrimination, nor racial segregation, had any place in the American military. But in spite of that presidential order, all black units like the 24th still existed in 1951 because some commanders enforced segregation with apparently no repercussions from their superiors. As a result, there was distrust and discord within many of the segregated units. Some of these companies were commanded by some officers who treated their men with respect and refused to accept low standards of discipline and performance. Those companies performed very well during the war. Other companies were not so fortunate, and hostility and frustration ruled the atmosphere and the performance. The 24th Infantry Regiment had inadequate equipment, inexperience at all levels, and leadership failures. As the unit's leaders failed, Joseph Galloway states, the self-confidence and motivation of the common soldier declined, and he began to lose any sense that he was part of something worthwhile and something much larger than himself. As a result, the soldiers of the 24th Infantry Regiment suffered an inordinately high number of casualties during this war. Because of the circumstances under which he served in the Korean War, Corporal Womack's service and valor bear a special mark of an extraordinary soldier. He was a soldier who chose to do his duty, to fight in the face of adversity and handicaps, and to prevail. Command Sergeant Major Womack had already retired from active duty when the war in the Middle East began in 1991. At age 63, which is kind of hard for me to relate to. At age 63, he was called back to active duty and served 6 months in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Many people believe that Command Sergeant Major Womack is the main reason why this war was won so quickly. The complete list of Command Sergeant Major Womack's military medals and commendations is a story all by itself, without much need for elaboration. It is as follows: 4 Bronze Stars for valor, 2 Air Medals for valor, 5 Army Commendation Medals for valor, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, the Combat Infantry Badge with Star for Korean War, the Combat Infantry Badge with a Star for Vietnam War, 5 Purple Hearts. And at this point you might notice that we didn't talk about the 5th Purple Heart because the citation for that is classified, so we can't get a hold of that one. The Vietnam Gallantry Cross for heroic conduct while fighting an enemy force, the Master Parachutist Badge, the Pathfinder's Badge, the Special Forces Tab, Vietnam Parachutist Badge, the Vietnam Special Forces Honorary Jump Wings, the Arrowhead for Combat Parachute Jump Vietnam, the Combat Medic Badge Vietnam, the Command Sergeant Major's Award, Vietnam Service Medal with 4 Bronze Service Stars, the Republic of Vietnam Service Campaign Ribbon, 4 Army Achievement Medals.
Yeah.
We'd like to present you with these tokens of our appreciation.
I want to thank you.
We'd like you to say a few words if you'd like.
Anyone want to ask questions that haven't been answered by him? I'll try to. That's me. I do what I have to do, and I don't think anyone in here that drives a car thinks about when to put the brakes on. Thinks about steering away from an incident. It's instinctively. You do it. And I spent more time in the sandbox. For those of you who are in the military or were in the military, you know what I'm talking about. It's easier to lose sweat than blood. Nobody left behind. When I say nobody, I'm speaking of what you are in right now. Doesn't mean that you're part of my team. An A team only has 4 people in it. And they do the work, and every one of them has 4 to 5 MOSs, so they can do what a platoon does. Nobody left behind. I don't want to cry, but I had some days when I felt like crying.